Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Grove here on all of my platforms. I am back this week to share some special time with you. Today's going to be a very special show for me as I am celebrating 30 years of being in contact with my spirit guides, the Emissaries of Light One. And I thought I'd dedicate this episode to that. With that being said, we will get to that shortly, but I'd like to um, I'd like to say hello to a few of you here in the chat if you're there. Hello, Sugar Venom Doll on YouTube. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. We are going to, of course, start today's show with our regular invocation of the goddess so that she can join and bless our time together. So, if you would like to close your eyes and join me for the invocation, you are more than welcome. O great goddess, Lady of the night and the silvery moon, she whom is the darkness and the light that shines through it. Hail to thee, great Lady of the moon. Hear us, your children, as we ask of your divine presence here within our sacred circle of light, where we have come to take our great beauty, strength, and wisdom that we find within each and every one of us. Blessed be. And before we get started, as usual, I always like us to take that minute meditation. So, in just a moment, we're going to do our minute meditation. And again, if you would like to join me, you can close your eyes and take a few deep breaths, kind of ground and bring ourselves to this very moment. Take a deep breath, close your eyes. And welcome back. I just want to check something because it seems I'm having technical difficulties, but I don't know if I'm having them on your end. So I need to go and check that out. Give me just a moment, everybody. Thank you for your patience. No, it might just be my computer. Huh. Eh, not too bad. Yes, it is. I see that now. Thank you. Yeah, the screen is black. There's something going on my end, guys. I'm sorry to say that. See. Up, and we're back. Sorry about that. There was some technical issue going on. I hope that this will not be an issue for the rest of today's broadcast. And again, apologies for the disruption. So today, since I am going to be talking about meeting the emissaries of light for the first time, I cannot believe that it's been 30 years already. It's just amazing that it's happened like that and so quickly. But I thought I'd start off with reading, as usual, I like to do a reading out of the Book of One, which is the information that they gave me. And anyway, I'm going to start with chapter 2 this time because it talks about the greatest lesson that I learned from my time with them and when I met them. And chapter 2 is called The One. It says, we are all part of one soul. Our souls are pieces of the one main soul, the source of all creation. You may call it God if you wish. Within our souls is everything God is, and so are our ultimate capabilities. All this is God. We are all able to achieve perfect goodness, and we are all able to achieve perfect evil. Free will gives us the choice of which path to follow. Good brings happiness, evil brings sorrow. And I picked that one because it has a major, it made a major impact on me, and that was, well, let's start at the beginning. So, as I said, I am celebrating 30 years of meeting the emissaries of light. I cannot believe it's been that long, and they have been a part of my life for, well, since 1992. I can't believe it. As many of you know, the Book of One, was channeled through me. It's their information that was channeled through me, and I'm not going to go into too much about the dynamics of it, the technicality of it. Things have changed in the way of my relationship with them over the last 3 decades, of course. For example, I no longer allow them to fully take over my body, but they are free to send me messages and send me downloads, which they do on a regular basis, actually more so lately again. There are times when I'm getting lots of information from them, and there are times where there's like a little dry spell, which I guess with when we're in states of heightened emotion or how should we say it, crisis, for lack of a better term, uh, I'm sure you can imagine that our body is not fine tuned to receive that type of information, and so I hadn't heard from them in about 3 months, and this weekend they finally made their themselves known again, just in time to celebrate the 30th anniversary of meeting them. But let's go back 30 years. Let's go back 30 years, and let me share with you a little bit of how that all came about. Those of you that have been watching my show and or have a copy of the book know that I was introduced to them through a shamanic vision quest. And that shamanic vision quest was not what I expected. Not at all what I expected. For months leading up to the actual vision quest, I had been working with my shamanic teacher. And of course, he had me do tons of research on the subject. I read a lot of the Michael Harner books and The Way of the Shaman, which was one book in particular that stuck out. And working with the shamanic practitioner, he kind of told me, the lay of the land. And I was, one of my biggest concerns was, how do I do this traditional shamanic vision quest inside of a house? According to the traditional methods, the initiate would go out either into the woods, and depending on the tribal traditions, some of them even built like burrows in the ground. Some of them would build, sweat lodges as one way of going on a vision quest. But we were going to use medicine, of course, a hallucinogenic medicine. And I was like, well, I want to do this as traditional as possible. So we did all we could to create the space that we were utilizing. When I say we, it was my partner at the time who was very interested in shamanic practices as well with me. Not so much as I was, but had a keen inclination. As a matter of fact, I have to do a shout out. I'm not going to say his name, but he was the one who introduced me to Joseph Campbell. He was the one who introduced me to Carl Jung. He was on to introduce me to the author Hermann Hesse, which was all huge influences on my early studies of metaphysics, magic, and shamanism. So in order for us to create the space, the womb, and that was the theme I was told to use that day, was to pick the spot within the home you were going to be doing the vision quest and turn it into a womb. And I'm like, what do you mean turn it into a womb? And we came up with the idea of just putting white sheets all over the doorways, all over the windows, blocking off the kitchen area. So the living dining room areas were completely covered with pure, clean white sheets. And the reason why we picked white sheets was I was instructed that we were only to have one lit candle in the entire space during the quest. The quest would be starting at sunset, so it was going to be kind of dark, and we wanted to have. We were kind of cheating using the white, thinking that the white would reflect the light of the candle, and it did, and it worked. It worked to our benefit, actually. Little did I know that once you get to a certain point, it doesn't matter what environment you were in. But I did want to create that space that was, something that represented the womb of the Mother Earth. In my studies, the many of the how should we say, anecdotal evidence and stories pointed to the fact that many of the practitioners experienced going into the womb of the earth as a form of a spiritual rebirth, of a death to the ego, of a death to our personality, of a death to who we thought we think we are. And yes, that ego does come right back. I still have one, but for the sake of the vision quest, the goal is to allow the ego to die. So we took the medicine, and maybe within an hour and a half, I started feeling the effects of it. I will say that we were prepared. I was told to prepare as if I were going out into the woods alone and to take everything I need. So we had a cooler of water, and being a young man, I also had a cooler of beer some beer in the cooler. But I had writing utensils, we had art supplies, paper, all these things that maybe if I wanted to take notes during the journey, I would be able to scribble them down, which I'm happy I did because a lot of the book started that night. But so it started off, it's very interesting how it started off as a joint journey. My partner and I were kind of sharing a consciousness at the beginning, and then suddenly it felt as if I was being whisked away. Uh, and what I mean by that, that my consciousness kind of separated from his, and I literally felt like I was going to die. I felt like I was dying. Again, that's par for the course. You're not dying. Um, I did everything I could to, hold on to quote unquote my sanity, my identity, and all of those things that come along with the moments leading up to an ego death until finally I just gave in and said, fine, I'm going to die. I thought I was going to die. I'm like, fine, go ahead, take me. And they did. I felt my body, I felt my spirit leave my body. I was whisked upward. Very interesting. I know some of you may have heard this story before, but it was very interesting as I was looking down at the home that we were doing the journey in. It was very interesting to see what I saw as these black, and they were black, like pitch black creatures. Like I always say they look like flying monkeys from Wizard of Oz, but that simplifies what it looked like to me. And they were like looking and trying to get in, almost to disrupt the journey, for lack of a better term, or at least that's what my intuition was telling me. Is like these things are trying to get in, to distract us, to disrupt this, this spiritual journey that I'm about to start. But needless to say, we did all the protection stuff, we did all the smudging, we did everything. The place was protected. Nothing was going to get in. But again, I started floating up, and I could see the house. I could see the city, and I kept raising higher and higher. And you'll notice, just to do a little side note here, is you'll notice a lot of the meditation work that I do with you guys will kind of incorporate that vision that I saw of seeing the home, seeing the city, seeing the region, seeing the hemisphere of the planet, seeing the entire planet, and raising up higher and higher and higher until I was taken into a very bright light. Now, the bright light was not your near death experience bright light where it was all peace and stuff. No, the bright light ended up bringing me onto, for lack of a better term, was a craft. I don't know any other way to explain it, but it was and I know this sounds cliche, but it was a circular type of craft. I'm not going to say it was UFO, but it was close to what people would consider a UFO. And in the circular craft, at first I was alone, and I couldn't help but notice that inside, in the center of this quote unquote craft, this place that I was at, it was almost like there was a viewing station of the earth, and I could see the earth below me. And little by little, I felt the presence of these, I'll say, entities, because they weren't humanoid. Well, maybe a little humanoid, but they were like these bluish, bright light beings that kind of slowly came to me, and I wasn't afraid of them. And they introduced themselves to me as the emissaries of light, as where the terminology came from. Um, and I would ask a few questions, and it wasn't until years later, during a channeled session, that they kind of identified themselves as the emissaries of light one. I saw them as one. It was in my heart that I knew that they were one consciousness, even though they were individual forms of that same consciousness, which kind of goes right back to what I'm talking about, what I was reading in that passage, but I'll get deeper into that in just a minute. And they kind of nudged me or called me toward to the center of this so-called craft with this viewing station of the earth, and that's where I saw everything that was causing havoc on the planet. I have come to realize that it was symbolic of humanity's separation from its own spirit, humanity's immersion and living life from its ego. For example, at that time, it was 92, I was shown images of the war in Bosnia and the genocide that was going on there. It was awful what I saw. I was shown the Ganges River and the pollution of the Ganges River and the overpopulation of India and how it was choking the life out of the river and out of the nature of life there. I was shown the overpopulation in China and how they had separated from nature. And I was shown the United States and the busy cities and everyone just rushing to get somewhere and not having the ability to take a moment to tap into their natural self, or what I would call now their authentic self. So these were all very disturbing to me. And one of the footnotes I got to backtrack on a little bit is that me doing all of these studies prior to this experience, prior to getting involved in magic, paganism, shamanism, I worked in the fashion industry. I worked as a stylist, a hairstylist, makeup artist, photo shoot designer, all that kind of stuff. So I was in the fashion world, and that world is not one for authenticity, if you know what I mean. Don't get me wrong, there are wonderful people. I know many people still in the biz that are great and actually very spiritually oriented. And I was very lucky to go work for a company after I moved back to Miami that was very much involved in spirituality. And it was Aveda. I worked for Aveda for a little bit, and they were really very in touch with meditation and all these practices and Ayurvedic systems and whatnot. So that was really cool. However, before that, I would consider myself, I always say it, I was a party boy douchebag, for lack of a better term. So when I saw all of these things that the emissaries of light were showing me through this viewing of planet Earth, it kind of, it broke my identity. It broke my idea of what I thought life was about. It completely destroyed my idea of who I was, the story of who Bernard was prior to that, and gave me a whole new perspective on what's important, what the priorities in in this present incarnation need to be. So this started way back when. I was able to have telecommunic now, telepathic conversation with several of the entities, and they said that they were a part of me and I was a part of them. And I know that kind of sounds, I'm trying to make it sound not from an ego stance, but they said one of them had incarnated in me, that I was an incarnation of one of them. So that was a real shock to me. But it kind of put all the puzzle pieces into place for my life up to them. Up till then, I had had paranormal experiences my entire life, very strange manifestation qualities for a young kid, being able to read the tarot at 6 years old without any training. So it was like, oh, okay, so my true higher self is one of y'all. But they're like, but we are one. I'm like, okay. Anyway, again, very metaphysical, philosophical stuff that I'm not going to try to lay down in our basic language because God knows our human language cannot grab the essence of what it was that I learned that day. But I did my best to put it in that book. Anyway, from there, I was whisked away into something greater. It was almost as I was whisked away into this giant golden orb. And I remember it was, everyone talks about the white light, the white light. Well, it wasn't a white light. It was this bright, bright golden, like a sun. It felt like I was being sucked into the sun. It was very, very peaceful. It was very calming. And I kind of had that complete moment of, I get it. I get it. And this orb, this golden orb, also had a consciousness. And I was communicating, or it was communicating with me telepathically. And it was almost like I could press my face again. I know this sounds strange, but again, it's the only way I can describe it. It was almost as if I could press my face against the edge of the orb and I could see the earth below me. And what I found so profound, what I found so profound about this was that I could also see pieces of this giant golden orb, like pieces of it, like pulling away and going down to the earth. And to best describe it, it almost looked like I use this analogy a lot when I tell this story. It almost looked like a lava lamp, where you know how in a lava lamp the little pieces like break away and eventually they fall back down and connect again. But that's what it looked like. It looked like globs of golden light coming back, going down to the earth. But then there were some of these pieces of the orb coming back and rejoining with it. And that is where, and I'll read it again now, and maybe now it'll make a little more sense. Let's see if I can find the page again, of where this message came from them. I guess they were helping me to put this into words. But that imagery and that visualization is where this passage came from. We are all part of one soul. Our souls are pieces of the one main soul, the source of all creation. You may call it God if you wish. Within our soul is everything God is, and so our ultimate capabilities, all this is God's. We are God, goddesses. We are able to achieve perfect goodness, and we are able to achieve perfect evil. Free will gives you the choice of which path to follow. Good brings happiness, evil brings sorrow. So you can see how the imagery that I experienced kind of led to that particular passage. And that's always stuck with me. So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit now and say that over the years after that, I didn't know what to do with the information. They kind of, for weeks after that experience, I was compelled. They had a way of getting into my body and compelling me to write. And for about 2 weeks, I just kept writing these passages that they told me I needed to write. And I didn't know what to do with the information. I was still in the beauty biz. I was really living in a state of cognitive dissonance because I was working in an industry that I no longer supported, other than being able to express my creativity. And I wasn't crazy about the people I had to work on, even though some of them had become very close friends, or work with, I should say, as well, work on and work with. So I had to live in a state of cognitive dissonance for several years. And in doing so, I did my best to embrace this new way of looking at the world and incorporating the experiences that I experienced into my pagan practice. Paganism or indigenous shamanic practices were the closest thing that related to what I experienced. So I gravitated toward Wicca, neo-paganism, shamanism, Buddhism, Taoism, all the cool isms, because they were the closest to how I understood the universe worked. There are some things I don't agree with in paganism, and there are some things that, well, that's one of the good things about paganism. It's very eclectic and very individual. So there are some things you might agree with that I don't agree with, and vice versa. But that's the beauty of it, and that's why I align so closely with the pagan path because of this experience that I've had. Not to mention my Native American background, et cetera, et cetera. But so for years, I would allow the emissaries of light to come into me during our ceremonies. Uh, I would do it just for my coven only, um, and they would have sessions with them. After I moved away from the group, there was a time I had a very strong magical group, a very powerful magical group. They were really good at what they did. And I just felt the calling to do something else. So I left the group. And that is when, and there's a whole lot of in between, Hurricane Wilma happened. I lost my business. And at that point was where I dedicated myself to this work that I'm doing here. That was about the time I started being on YouTube and started doing radio shows and whatnot. And I met this wonderful woman, Annabelle Montalbano, who was a guest on my show. She had actually stepped in for somebody. The guest, she had booked the guest. She was one who booked the guest. The guest couldn't make it. She stepped in, and it was amazing because we just connected and we ended up working together. She ended up asking me if I would be interested in recalling the emissaries of light, allowing them back into my body and having her interview them to finish the book. She's like, you have this book, but it's not done. They need to go, they need to expand on these passages. And that's what she did. And that's what we did. After the book was completed, I got to the point where I started feeling uncomfortable. And you'll actually, if you read the book, you'll see some of the dialogue of Annabelle with the emissaries of light. And they're like, Bernard doesn't like this, Bernard wants the cigarette. He wants us to leave, that kind of thing. And I didn't like the idea of them taking control of my body. So we made a deal. I made an arrangement with them that I will always listen to what they have to say. They are free to immerse, downloads of information into me, which they do very, very often. And you'll find that if you reading my book, you'll see there's more and more information throughout the years that I've added. This is the 4th edition, I believe. This one with this cover is the 4th edition because more and more information keeps coming. But we have a very good arrangement now, and I still, when I'm in need, I call upon them. Yes, of course, I still pray to Isis. Isis is my patron goddess. I see her as the Great Mother, and so when I'm praying, I will pray to Isis. But most of the times when I'm asking for advice or something like that on my life, and I need clarity, I'll ask the emissaries of light to come in and kind of guide me in the right direction. But it's been quite an interesting journey, and 30 years. I cannot believe it's been 30 years. Now, with that, I have to do some full disclosure about something because I don't read my own book. I'm really bad about this. I create videos, I won't rewatch them. I'll write books, I won't read it. But as I was researching today's thing, it turns out that I had thought I had met them in the spring of '92. I was wrong. It was in the fall of '92. So I'm a little bit early for this talk, but who knows? We'll probably do it again come September. But anyway, so that was my experience with meeting them, and I will say, working in the work that I do, I've been told that they are Native American spirit guides. I've been told that they are Arcturians. I've been told that they are transdimensional entities. I've been told that they are time walkers, or I don't know if you've ever heard that idea of like spirits from the future coming in and incarnating into someone's body. All I know is that the closest thing I can say that I align with is perhaps they are of the Arcturians because they are blue and bright, and they are light beings, and they are not of a physical form, that they are evolved enough to share one consciousness but still be individual entities. So to me, that's very evolved and beyond this, 3.5D, 4D, even 5D dimensional awareness. So what are they? They are my guides, and they call themselves emissaries of light one. And I'm happy to have them in my life, and I'm happy they've given me all this information to share with you over these last online for the last 15 years, if not more now. So thank you. Let me say hello to a few of you. I hope the chat's there, and there's a few there. Anyway, hi Terry. Good to see you. I'm so glad you're here. Hello, James. Nice to see you on YouTube. One of our former uh, board members of the GIC. Yeah, it's true, James. We are stepping more and more into multi-dimensionally faceted consciousness. We're getting there more and more. Sarah, hello on Facebook. Thank you. I'm so glad you love it. I'm so glad you like it. Mighty Soul on Facebook. Thank you for being here. Good to see you all. I'm going to scroll up a little bit. I got spam on Twitch. What else is new? Anyway, so yeah, that's that. We are out of time. I actually ran a little bit over, but we'll return with our regular Grove format. We will be doing an intention. Hopefully, you watched last week's and you took some notes or mental notes. So we will be doing an intention next week. We'll do some more meditation, and let me see what I can do about getting the emissaries of light to give us some new content for me to share during next week's show. I'm not going to make any promises. Anyway, I love you all so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being so much a part of my life, and especially to those of you like Treva, James, Yvonne, Annabelle, Janine, and all of you that have been a part of this story, of my story with the Emissaries of Light. I love you all very much. Have a great week. See you next week. Bye-bye.